Welcome to AI Innovators, our new interview series brought to you by the AI Leaders Council. Today we have special guest OJ Laos, and I'd like to introduce myself and welcome everyone. I'll be your host moderator today. I'm Neil Brown, Executive Director of the AI Leaders Council. And I'm very pleased to introduce our AI innovator, Octavio O.J. Laos is Director of AI at Armanino, a top 20 accounting and technology firm with more than 3,000 employees and 26 offices across the US and globally. OJ is a frequent speaker on AI topics at industry conferences and a contributor to academic publications and news outlets, including Fox Business. He earned a JD from the UCLA School of Law and a BA Economics and Political Science from the University of California, Davis. OJ resides in Chicago, as I do. OJ, welcome and thank you for participating.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's get right into our questions here. Uh, Tell us a bit about yourself and your role in AI, and as well as an overview of your company.
Sure. I think it's interesting leading the internal AI charge at a firm like Armanino. And let me explain that. So Armanino is a tax audit and consulting firm. But what I think is unique when it comes to AI is that we have consulting and technology consulting specifically around AI solutions as well. So I came to this from a position of originally being part of the consulting team. I was a member of our technology consulting group for a number of years. And then 5 years ago, we founded the AI Lab, is what we called it. And the AI Lab was really at the time, I think, pretty innovative. I can't say we had all the answers. We didn't know what AI was going to be, but we knew we had to turn our focus towards figuring out, what those gaps and differences were going to be, mostly for our clients at the time. We were doing a lot of machine learning, think big data sets, working through how we could do predictive analytics. Chatbots we were trained on a lot of early systems at the time, but that was such a small piece of it. Little did we ever know it would change the way we had, like it had today of generative AI and come so back to the forefront. As far as what I'm doing within the firm, I'd say 2 or 3 years ago, we really made a very conscious shift towards not just working at it from a consulting angle externally, but viewing internally. And we realized that we needed to have more process in place and, specific attention paid to how we were going to implement AI at our firm. So that's when I changed roles slightly when it comes from the organizational side of it, and now I'm on our operational team, working towards at a high level what tools we deploy, what are our policies going to be, and what is our overall strategy to integrate AI into everything that we do.
Okay, very interesting. So from consulting to internal organization and you're implementing these tools then across your massive organization.
It's practicing what we preach, right? And I think we have to be honest and diligent with how much it's changing. And it's interesting to see these roles evolve of how AI leadership is something that, even when we founded this group 4 or 5 years ago, that wasn't a part of the plan. Little did we know how quickly it would evolve to where it is now.
And do some of the implementations and use cases that you have, are your consulting peers able to provide those to your clients?
They do. It provides a unique synergy kind of going back and forth, even things like trainings and what our strategy is to identify key areas that we'd want to implement AI, quite frankly, how we do it, like what is that process? It's a lot of it is so new. It's really unique to kind of see both sides working together on that.
That is an interesting dynamic. All right, well, let's get to our next question. How did you first begin working with AI? You kind of talked about that a little, but what sparked your interest in applying it to your career or business?
Yeah, so I'll say this. When I first joined, although we founded that AI lab, like I said, it was very different than what it is today. But originally, when I joined the firm, it was from a broader technology and product management standpoint. I worked a lot in our ERP integrations and those systems, on a technical side, but not necessarily AI. I think what really changed my attitude, or at least understanding of how AI really works, was a lecture I saw really going into detail about machine learning, excuse me, but as a math problem. And really looking at it as all machine learning is. It's a math problem where we know the answer, but not the variables that go into it. And seeing something become much more tangible certainly helped to click. And I think the more we can diffuse some of this mysteriousness of AI, sometimes people think of it as just this omnipotent being and breakdown of what's really happening. And again, typically it's just a bunch of math and statistics. It certainly changed my view of what was possible, how feasible some of these things were, and what we could really do. I think once you make it more tangible, you start to quickly see everywhere it can apply, and you have a very different perspective. This is extremely true today. Obviously, the technology has changed, but I think working with large language models, like almost exclusively, I want to say now, for the past year and a half, 2 years, the fundamental understanding of it and what's going on behind the scenes, I think it really helps you get into some of that understanding of how the technology is going to change everything in what it really means. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's fascinating and it's exciting now that I'd say the world has caught up with some of that interest. I mean, we've seen it. Some of the most popular technology in the world now is stems from AI.
Yeah, well spoken. I read a little factoid just the other day that there's 14 new AI startups every day. So there's definitely a lot of momentum there. And I lived through the internet wave, and so this wave is, and that's another little soundbite that this wave is, 20 times the size of that internet wave. So
I mean, I think it's just interesting that generative AI in particular and the impact that it will have, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but a big piece of why the technology is so appealing to so many people is it lowers the barrier to entry. And for an entrepreneur, I mean, that just means so much more you can build out and fail and try with such lower costs. So, while I do think the AI bubble may burst as far as valuation goes, I do think we're going to see the ability for more and more startups on a variety of subjects, right? Even not AI specifically, but built with AI is going to enable a whole lot of different things, which will move, the world forward.
you bet. Thank you for that. How is your organization currently using AI, and where have you seen the most meaningful impact so far?
Yeah, good question. I always view this as two sides of the same coin. And which one is more impactful is arguably up to debate. And I suppose it relies on how far the time horizon is. But I'd say the most obvious early benefit and largest use cases tend to come from more behind the scenes, process oriented, specific built, software based solutions. So what do I mean by that? Things like we leverage some predictive analytics, OCR, and a little bit of generative AI to scan all of our engagement letters that come in. So again, we're tax audit CPA firm on that side. We send out thousands upon thousands of renewals every year. They come back. We have to scan that information, validate everything is in there correctly, the signatures, the terms, et cetera, et cetera. Enter that information into CRM, into our project management system. And I mean, we're literally talking, tens of thousands of these documents. So where AI comes in on something like that is to quickly extract, pull out that key information, validate and point out or call out any issues that might be there to dramatically speed that up. So when we talk about impact, I mean, that's saving someone I think it was over 10x per of these letters. And again, with thousands of them out there, it's a huge benefit. So from an organizational standpoint, I think those really bespoke options are going to be the biggest ones. We also do things where we build AI into in a kind of, I guess, similar way here when we think about document management. Some of our internal tools. So we have platforms for audit, for example, where clients will send us their evidence, right, for a given audit test. And then we can quickly scan that and make sure we have the right document and we're applying it to the right spot. So we don't have to go back and forth on email 100 times. Now, all that happens in the background. So I think that impact is huge, but not always visible. I'd say the exact opposite of that would be the grounds up, in your face. I am leveraging a generative AI tool and also impactful. So we rolled out Copilot here at the firm. That was one of the programs that I manage. And so far, it's been wildly popular. We can't keep licenses in stock because as we continue to expand the program, we did come out in tranches. There's just been such pent-up demand. We have 98% usage for those that have it. And last I looked, we had 48,000 Copilot uses in the last month. So, I mean, as far as impact goes, it's hard to ignore that as well. Now, that's more at the individual level because that's someone using it. It could be something small, it could be something big. It might be help me rewrite this email, it might be help me brainstorm on this problem, or help me do this research on this hyper specific, rule I'm trying to interpret. But you can quickly see how it changes just the way everyone works, and that's been almost immediate.
Well, that's really neat that you've got some KPIs there that sound really strong. So that's really cool. So, what have you learned about leading or implementing AI initiatives that might help other innovators, other AI directors, other executives?
Yeah. Well, you hit on it a second ago about KPIs and understanding what success is before you go in. I'm sure we're all familiar. There was an MIT study. 95% of the projects fail or didn't show meaningful ROI. And I do push back on that. I don't think that 95% of generative AI projects fail. I think 95% of generative AI projects didn't have the right goals, KPIs, or, known objectives in place for them to really quantify what that effect is. And what I mean by that is usage is, I think, a critical stat that gets overlooked, especially when it comes to these individual tools. We have trouble getting people to open critical emails about firm updates. It is very rare that we have 98% of people, doing anything right on time or
Yeah,
accessing a new tool that we roll out. And I think it gets to realizing that this is a very different it's a different set of technology than maybe we've ever dealt with before. I mean, I think it's closer to saying what is the ROI on a laptop or a cell phone that you're expensing for an employee. Not that you don't need to know it, but that you have to think about it a little bit differently. So it's critical to me that I think the most important thing we found was transparency in just building that trust out that people can use these tools, in ways that we didn't necessarily think of. The goal is to innovate for the individual. They're going to find those use cases that they'll bubble up. And typically those use cases have become common from the citizen, the everyday person that used Gen AI to solve something. That's where we get our best opportunities for what I mentioned earlier. The more bespoke, I'd say firm-wide level, development-oriented type of automations that are leading the charge. So it's a bit of both, right? I think you need to have some very specific projects with very clear objectives and very clear workflows enabled. But a good way to get there is to realize that you have to harvest everyone as a whole and empowering people to have those tools and a tool that they're comfortable raising their hand and saying that they're using is critical. I have seen a lot of employees that are afraid to share. You know, oh, I used AI on this. I don't want to get in trouble, or should we kind of try to hide it or something like that? And that's what you need to avoid at the end of the day with these programs.
yeah. That's good advice. So, do you, as part of your role, then leading the training for across the company?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we realized that for us, every business unit is so different, right? I mean, audit has very strict um, guidelines and regulations compared to tax or consulting, or we do like high wealth, family office, business management. So the way we handle that is a kind of a federal and state level, if you will. So I come at the top level, broader, firm-wide training, availability, kind of helping them guide through that. But we do give the flexibility to each smaller business unit to kind of define what their comfort level is within our overall, we have our overall AI policies and security guidelines. And then part of what I do though is go to these different groups to kind of help educate them, help them understand how they can leverage these tools, and then get feedback too on what they're doing, and see what consistent themes that we get. And more often than not, you can find these consistent tool uses to kind of figure out then what are the big problems that we really need to solve at a firm-wide level.
Right. And then there's that privacy aspect. You don't, like you say, you're in tax and audit and consulting. There's sensitive financial information. You can't just put that out into the public chat GPT. So you probably use a private network for that, don't you?
Absolutely. So we do a lot of our, you know, well, there's some one-off things you have to do for some of the most sensitive information, I guess I should say, when it comes to kind of data loss prevention and the rules you have in place. I mean, at a high level, um, we're proud to be a frontier firm within Microsoft, a strong, partnership there, and working with them on their innovation labs on some of the most cutting edge deployments that they have of customized Copilot instances and ways that we can keep that information safe. But yeah, it's critical as you think through what it's going to be that you enable. This is a good, again, goes to enablement though, because you have to have thought through that. Because if you don't give people an option, I will say this: bring your own AI is certainly a problem that's happening out in the world today. And if we don't provide those tools, they'll go and find them somewhere else, and probably a less safe option, which you would have come up with. So yeah, it's always on our mind and something that's always evolving. When you look at attack vectors and risk that's associated with these tools.
Wow, that's good stuff. Let's take a look at the crystal ball then, and the future. What do you see as the most important opportunities or challenges for AI in your industry and in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. The knowledge workers, they say, disproportionately are at risk of leveraging these tools, and it's one of the largest groups to start using them. Now, I don't think that necessarily translates one to one. I'm not worried about the industry, going away as a whole, and certainly, I think there's a ton of importance towards what the individual does, and specifically finance and accounting is such a hyper specific practice. You can't quite let a hallucination get in the way. But that being said, I think that pressure and concern with what our comfort level is going to be from allowing automation of, like we just said, critical data, and big business decisions that rely on this is going to be an interesting push and pull as time goes forward. I think too few people worry about the statistics today. We hear it. They say, yeah, they can put together this memo that's 80% right, but I still have to fix it. That's true, but I give it a year and I do think that's going to change. So it's going to be, I think it is an inherently great opportunity for people to lean in and really leverage these tools, understanding that, we're only privy to such a small piece of what's going to happen. So it's how can we do as much as we can and kind of temper expectations today, but put ourselves in a position for what the future will be. I'll say this, as a firm that at the end of the day, no matter what the service offering that we have, the goal is always the same. I mean, it's always we're very directly here in a business to business role to help our clients succeed. And this changing landscape is gonna certainly change the way that happens, but businesses will continue to need those advisory services. They'll continue to be compliant. And it's on us to understand that, how do we continue to serve clients in this unsuspecting world? So I think the opportunities will be there. I think the biggest challenge will be overcoming some of that fear, I guess I should say. And I mean, and very valid fear of risk, especially with some of the unpredictable nature when using something like generative AI. But as we continue to expand our capabilities and I think our education and upskilling on the tools, I think it's going to look dramatically different. And I think it'll be for the better.
Wow. Yeah, I agree with that, OJ. And with that, I'd like to just thank you so much for taking some of your valuable time and sharing your experience and your insights with us. And we're we're doing these AI innovators interviews, and you can view them all here at aileaderscouncil.org/AI-innovators. So thank you again for participating, and look forward to future collaboration.
Sounds good. Thank you, Neil.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one. Thanks.